Welcome to the deep dive. We received this really interesting piece called A Faithful Lie.
hmm
And it digs into something I think many of us feel that sense of, something missing, or maybe just general unhappiness sometimes.
Yeah, and what caught my eye immediately was its core argument, which is kind of provocative. It suggests that our intellect, the very thing we use to understand everything,
Right. Our thinking mind.
that might actually be the source of that feeling of lack.
Exactly. It's this idea that the intellect works by differentiating. It separates this from that, me from you, something from nothing.
Makes distinctions.
Yes. And the source argues that this act of dividing things up inherently creates a sense of separation.
And that feeling of being separate,
Yeah.
that's where the feeling of not enough comes from, according to this view.
It even says someone without intellect, like without that ability to make these conceptual divisions, wouldn't experience this specific kind of lack.
Which then leads to the text calling the intellect the lie.
Okay, now that sounds pretty strong. A lie.
Well, yeah, but it clarifies, it's not like your mind is deliberately deceiving you. It's more like um, the framework it uses, this constant analysis and categorization,
hmm
is inherently limited, maybe even flawed. And that flawed way of seeing creates these artificial divisions which, well, lead to suffering.
So it's like the tool itself isn't quite right for the job of achieving maybe peace.
Something like that. Which brings up a paradox the text highlights.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. When we feel bad, when we feel that lack, what do we usually do?
We try to think our way out of it.
Right. We turn to our intellect, we analyze, we problem solve.
We use the very tool that, according to this source, might be generating the misery in the first place.
It's like trying to fix a shaky table by leaning on it harder.
Exactly. It really questions our go-to strategy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We just automatically trust our thinking process to find solutions.
So if the intellect is potentially the problem, or at least part of it, where does a faithful lie suggest we look?
Well, it proposes something pretty
Mm-hmm.
radical. It says to doubt everything.
Everything. Like everything, I think.
Pretty much. Question your assumptions, your beliefs, even the things you feel absolutely certain about.
Yeah.
And crucially, doubt the reliability of your own intellect as the ultimate judge.
Okay, wow. Why? What's the goal of all this doubting?
The goal, it says, is to seek only the truth, to strip away everything else until you find what is undeniably fundamentally true for you.
It's like a deep clean for the mind, getting rid of clutter.
You could see it that way.
No.
Challenging the foundations of how we construct reality.
And this process, this questioning, does it lead somewhere specific?
It leads towards what the source calls a true and whole intellect.
Okay, true and whole. How's that different from our regular intellect?
The idea is that our usual intellect is kind of partial, fragmented.
Yeah.
It focuses on the differences, the separations.
Right, the dividing up we talked about.
Exactly. Whereas the true and whole intellect is one that recognizes the interconnectedness of everything. It grasps the idea that fundamentally all is truly one.
Ah, so it's about seeing the bigger picture, the unity behind the apparent diversity.
Precisely. And the source argues that suffering comes from operating only with that partial view, the one that sees only the divisions, the pseudo-intellect, as it calls it sometimes.
So seeing the lie within the way we typically think, that allows for a shift.
Yes, understanding the limitations of that dividing intellect, seeing the truth of interconnectedness through it, somehow transforms it. The intellect itself isn't inherently bad, but its partial use leads to suffering. A full, whole understanding leads to recognizing unity.
Okay, so let's try and distill this. The big takeaway for listeners might be, maybe that nagging feeling of lack isn't just about external circumstances.
Right. It could also be deeply connected to how our mind structures reality by constantly creating these separations.
And the path forward, suggested here, involves questioning that very structure, doubting our usual ways of thinking.
Mm-hmm. It encourages a move towards perceiving a more unified reality.
Interesting stuff. Definitely challenges some common assumptions.
Absolutely. It leaves us with a thought to maybe chew on. If all this constant analyzing and categorizing we do does contribute to feeling dissatisfied, what could happen if we tried to cultivate more, say, acceptance or a sense of connection?
You mean without necessarily ditching our intellect entirely?
Yeah, exactly. Can we find a kind of balance, a way to use our understanding, our intellect, but maybe integrate it with a simpler sense of just being, experiencing things more directly, perhaps?
Finding a balance between understanding the world and just being in it, that's definitely something to ponder.